Alright, what's up guys? Sorry for the road sounds. It's always going to sound like that. Let me tell you about the first major failure that I've had on this, and I'm just about to crank it over and see if I still have a problem. That is not sitting on jack stands right now. The hydraulic rear suspension is currently stuck, completely extended, solid as a rock, doesn't move. So the other day, or yesterday, was it yesterday? I did brake pads on this thing, and I also fixed the exhaust leak, by the way. And then, I thought I had a sticking caliper, so yesterday I went to investigate that. Jacked it up in the rear, right on the differential, so both sides were completely sagged down, and I didn't really have anything sticking. It was free rolling, so I decided I was going to start it up in order to have vacuum to really be able to work the brakes. While I started it up, the charge light came on, and I'm like, what the heck? So I go under the hood, and there's just hydraulic fluid going everywhere. So I don't know if I had mentioned it in any of the other videos, but this has, and all the wagons do have, the self-leveling system, SLS, self-leveling rear suspension, hydraulic. So the actual shock absorbers in the rear are hydraulic rams, basically. There's a hydraulic pump right there on the engine. High pressure line, that banjo fitting, goes over to a hard line, runs to the back. There's the reservoir right there. There's a few models from the 80s that had that, and then they continued doing that on certain models all the way up through the 90s, and maybe even beyond that. I just don't know much about the newer ones. I thought it wasn't operating at all because the car sags in the rear, but I've come to realize, or come to research, that the sagging is more or less probably a mechanical issue, like worn springs or worn spring isolators, differential mount. There's a few different things that can cause the sagging. Well, it's apparent to me that it was operating, because once that line went and all the pressure went out of it while it was still up on the jack, now you see it's something weird. It just completely stuck in the up position. So I didn't really get to decided just not to film anything, because I was just really in let's get this thing done mode, and I didn't think it was even that interesting. I guess really it was interesting. It should have been a whole video, right? But I'm still on the original hose. I couldn't find the hose, and also, I don't even know what leaked. So I'm kind of an idiot. I should have done some more investigating. I got out here, there was oil in this general vicinity shooting out. I shut it down, and then I kind of just figured, well, it must be that high pressure hose. The hose doesn't look like it was breached, although it is a little dry rotted. This is a specific type of end fitting that you can pretty much, you just replace the hose. They're almost like AN fittings. This part actually reverse threads onto the hose. You can actually see some of the dry rot cracks. This part reverse threads onto the hose. This deal, and the other thing, the banjo, also has a really long tapered end on it, and then it threads into this. So you basically are threading it and expanding the hose, and it all kind of goes together similar to an AN fitting. Well, I ended up cutting part of the end of this hose off, but I'm actually now thinking maybe it was the pump that was leaking, because all the fluid, in my mind, now that I think about it, most of the fluid I saw shooting out was more this way, and for it to be in the hose, it would have been over here. Well, you can kind of see right now where a lot of the fluid was just shooting up. Everything was covered in fluid. The reason obviously it wasn't charging was because there was just oil going all over the belt, which the belt was also loose. So I finally got that tightened up, and I realized, I saw this the other day, I was like, is that what I think it is? The tensioner bolt is completely missing from this, but I was able to loosen it all up and get it to move kind of by prying it and get it into position. The belts are a lot tighter now. So I'm about to just set this up and just crank on it, and hope, it's not going to really start. It doesn't start that easily anyway. So I'm just going to crank it. If it starts, I'll shut it right off, and I'm going to try to observe, maybe even, I'm going to put this camera right here and try to see if I can see where it's leaking. Because if it is just a pump gasket, we could still fix that. If I did just inadvertently somehow fix the hose by cutting the end off, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, and so just to clarify, the reason I didn't just replace the hose is because I couldn't find anybody who had the hose. I didn't actually go to a hydraulic shop though. Basically, I have a friend that does hydraulic hoses on a garbage truck, so he works at a garbage truck place, and I've had him do a power steering high pressure line for the truck one time, But it turned out he did not have the hose. So he had the hose overnight, and I didn't have any way of doing anything. He had it. He couldn't get the things to make it happen. So I went there today and picked the hose back up, and I just decided, you know what? I don't know if it's even the hose that's leaking, so I decided to just throw it back on and do a better investigation. If it is the hose, I could still go to a hydraulic shop, and surely I can still get that raw hose and do it again. Alright, apparently I wasn't recording. I was trying to see if I could find where the leak was, if I still had a leak. I thought I was filming the hose when it happened, and I wasn't. But this is kind of the aftermath. I found the leak. Alright, I'm doing it again. I'm getting it done, and I'm not filming anything. So, just to show you, it's basically like a brake line on that end, banjo fitting on that end. Just put that in a vise. The fitting should just break loose. I already broke that loose, by the way, but just screw that. And that's, you can hear the tapered end. That's the sound of it in the hose. Of course, I also just put this together, but originally it wasn't too hard to get the fitting out. I didn't originally take the ends off. My friend did, because he had them at his job, and I just went there, grabbed the stuff, came back, put it back together. Alright, so that guy is unthreaded. See, it'll just come out of there, and here you can see the some kind of similar. Wait, there's some debris in there. It's kind of similar how it goes together to an AN fitting. Now the tricky part, although I don't know. Well, okay, so by the way, I found the breach in the hose. And I think that's where I originally thought it was anyway, right there. I think, because it's underneath, it was hard to see where it was shooting out, but right after I shut it off there, I don't know if you saw it on camera, I didn't look at the footage yet, but it was basically spraying or shooting a stream out of there. So I'm just going to try and just cut it back beyond that point and see what happens. So this piece here is actually reverse threaded onto the hose. So it's like we're going to tighten it. And that's not even tight actually, but that, you know, possibly it might have just been leaking out of the end of this because I didn't get that on there all the way, but it was real tough getting it off. Or I should say, it was real tough getting that other piece in there, so I kind of like threaded it off to help start the other piece. But either way, here we are. We're kind of starting over anyway, so we're going to try to eliminate that I do believe is the spot it was leaking, and then we're going to try to get that bastard on there much better than we had it on there before. And somewhere in here, yeah, I think right there, there's a restrictor in here, so I don't know, I just have a feeling I'm going to be chasing my tail here just with constant leaks because this hose is pretty shot. But at this point in the day, on a Friday, this is my only option, so I'm just going to try it. Let's try right about there. Alright, and there's, oh shoot, there's a couple of things in here. Okay, so that's got to be part of that restrictor as well. Let's see if that'll pull out. I don't know if that's part of the inside of the hose or... No, it moves. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Where's the other end I just cut? Yeah, so this deal was actually in there, and that the end of the hose, so the fluid was flowing this way, and I see that this has a hole in it. This does not have a hole in it, and does not appear that it's supposed to have a hole in it. stick her in. And then we'll take this. What I did before was I just went ahead and screwed this guy all the way on, then tried shoving this in. So I'm wondering if I actually have to kind of work it to where this is not fully screwed on, and then you actually kind of try to screw it on as you go. Not too sure, but we're going to get this started. So remember, this is a reverse thread, so basically just going to start spinning it onto the son of a bitch. And now I think I'm going to try that. Like I said, I'm just going to try to get this guy started, because I'll tell you what, it was a real freaking nightmare trying to get it started. I had the vice grips around this. This is how I did it earlier. I had this guy screwed all the way down basically. This was like all the way to here. I couldn't shove it in by hand anymore. So I had this lightly around here, and I was bam, 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 hammering that down in. Probably not the correct way to do it. So let's get this started. There we go. Start that. Now, do that. Now, gotta be careful about crushing it in the vise too, because those restrictors are in there. Okay, now, basically this guy has to spin on. Oh, damn it. I guess I didn't have her threaded on there, right? Oh, for sure I did. Take that off a little bit. Get that guy started. Where's my rim? Damn it. Okay. Get that guy started like that. Okay, we got some engagement now. Oops. Frickin' bloody have no space to record this stuff. Too many other videos going in the background. I got freaking so much footage. And then I got like the other videos that I produced. Everything's on my phone, so it's not like... So alright, that's started. Now before I go any further, I think I will take... Let's take this like that. Okay, actually wait, those restrictors are in there. Try to, I know you can't see, which is why I'm just going to unrecord, and you're just going to have to know that I did it or I didn't when I'm done. Alright, it's together. Hopefully it's on there far enough. Let's see what happens. Okay, spoiler, it's not on there far enough. Everything I just did, well, not everything I just did, but that wasn't really the right way to do it. You're going to find out what happens, but I figured out the way to actually do it and not have it be a problem, but I didn't film that, and it involved squeezing it long ways in the vise to get the fitting to start. What a nightmare and what a freaking pain it was. But anyway, let's continue on with the video. All right, let us see if this was. Let us see if we accomplished anything. Luckily, in the back of the car was 4 quarts of the special Febby-Bilstein hydraulic fluid for the suspensions. All right, well, the good news is we don't have any leaks. bad news is the suspension's still locked up. So I'm going to drive it down the road and see if that does anything. So there's accumulator balls there, and the struts are actually hydraulic rams. And this here is the mechanism, the leveling valve, connected to the sway bar linkage. And I bled that, and we have fluid flow. Man, is it nasty looking, though. It needs to be changed. That's probably part of the issue. This could need a rebuild. It might not be functioning at all. I actually was able to move this quite a bit through the range, and nothing's happening. So I also think our ride height issue, possibly the differential mount, if not the spring rubbers. But basically there's no suspension right now. It barely kind of bounces on the springs, and I'm just gonna have to take it down the road and see what happens. I mean, at least there's not hydraulic fluid pissing everywhere. So if the next step is removing the hydraulic struts and seeing if maybe they overextended and got stuck or something, I mean, that's kind of the only thing I can think might have happened. But I have had it jacked up and sagged out before. I just did, and then put it back down and it compressed. I just never had it. That was the first time I had it jacked up and it sagged out, and then I started it. All right, so kind of screwed now. I'm gonna have to take apart them struts or pull the struts open or out or something. I tried jumping up and down on the back. They ain't moving at all. So, and now I got no suspension. It's like, it's kind of weird. Like, it kind of moves on the springs, but the struts are just completely locked up. I'm about to go up the road a little bit and just see if it fixes itself. It's not going to, but see what it does. Turbo sounds pretty good with no filter on it. And yeah, I got no suspension. I can feel it bouncing. Feels like I'm driving a 1-ton truck. Damn it! Well, I'm gonna have to pull that stuff apart now. I can't drive it like this. So I put it up on jack stands and I started pulling the wheels off with the intention of actually pulling the struts. Wasn't really thinking, actually, because I realized, well, wait a minute, why don't I just crack the lines on the struts and see what happens there. So now let's locate the lines for the struts. Behind these panels, I don't know, I'm gonna have to start pulling some stuff out and pull that panel off. Where would it be? They kind of go forward, so I think they're gonna be maybe up underneath there or behind that panel. So I'll start pulling things apart and see where I get. All right, so I put the seats down, the rear seats. This panel pops right up and out. It's actually supposed to be this grommet. This grommet was just sitting in here. And that, there may be the other ones around here somewhere. But there is the top. That's what the grommet covers. That's what I'm looking for. So basically, I'm just going to break that loose. See if there's any pressure and see if I can get these things to move at all. That's interesting. Is that an Allen head that's completely fried? Yeah, it is. Possibly because somebody was already in here trying to mess with this. Alright, so this is actually pretty funny. Things are failing, other things are fixing themselves. When I got the car, the guy told me this door only opens from the inside, not the outside, which, you know, initially it did. Well, guess what? I just didn't even remember that. Clink, I just opened it from the outside, no problem, and both rear doors are doing it, so I know I wasn't mistaken on which one. Yeah, so I wonder what's going on there, but that just fixed itself. Alright, so I actually cracked the line and a bunch of air bubbles along with fluid came out, so hopefully that's going to be an issue, is that it needs to be bled. but it seems like they're still locked up. I just like tried lifting by hand, although that's probably stupid. I'm not going to probably be able to do that. I'm going to end up putting the jack underneath the control arm and try to jack it up. I still got to pop the other one, see if that one will bleed out, and then I'll ultimately probably start the engine and maybe try jacking up on them. And possibly I'm going to also run a fluid flow check with the engine running, make sure I'm getting actual fluid flow at the struts, which I don't doubt I am, being that fluid and air bubbles just came out of it. All right, now we've got bigger issues. So whatever was at the back is probably just the residual in the system. It turns out I got no fluid flow at all right now, which is interesting considering we just had a major leak, which was obviously flowing a lot of fluid. The reservoir's topped off. One of the first things the first thing I did to check fluid flow is you pull this out and the filter's there, and that's actually the fluid return line for the system. Goes through the filter and back in. There ain't nothing coming out of that. I popped this line off the other end of the main pressure line that I just fixed, and it's dry as a bone, like nothing is happening. So then I popped it off there, and it seems like there's really nothing happening, so it's not like clogged in the line. So I'm about to take this main feed. This is the feed hose, the other hose there comes from the bottom there. So maybe, hopefully, there's some sort of clog going on in the feed line. I really don't know. I'm starting to get to the end of this where it's, first of all, I'm losing daylight, but I'm really just not pleased with what's going on right now. I mean, there's no way that this whole system just took a complete crap just because I blew a line. And it's not like I ran it. I ran it for maybe 10 seconds at the most, you know, with it blow. I know it didn't run out of fluid either. It was still in the reservoir and leaking when I shut it down. And I'm not talking about today when you saw it on camera. I'm talking about the first time it happened. So let's continue investigating. Well, there's basically no fluid at the end of this hose. I even tipped it down and didn't really get any coming out of it. So we got one of two problems right now. I haven't gone any further. Either there's some kind of a clog, or worst case scenario, that pump is not working at all. Now I'm wondering if there's some sort of internal sealing issue because there's O-rings in there. Maybe something like that has happened. Although I don't know if those O-rings are just to stop it from like letting oil into the engine, which can happen. Really, I just do not understand. There's no way that the short amount of time that this failed, it ruined the pump. Like I said, it never really ran dry. Oh man, so I'm gonna try to see if I got a clog in that hose. Alright, I'm gonna fire the car up and I'm gonna send some air pressure. I don't have a clog in my hose, but there's really not any fluid flowing down and out of it, so maybe it's just needs a little bit of help priming back up. But before I start it, I am just gonna hit it with a tiny bit. Hopefully I don't lose prime now. I'm going to hook this back up. Alright, so it's the next day. I just had to stand back and think for a minute. And I tell you what, I've been going over all the different parts and things that are potentially required to get rid of this system and just go to a normal suspension. Now, the thing is, it's not like you can just bolt on 300D suspension. So the wagons, they all had the hydraulic self-leveling suspension because it's a wagon, and in order to be able to put a bunch of stuff in the back, it needs to have that. I know other manufacturers didn't need to have that, but Mercedes is Mercedes, so they did. The 300D, now this is a 300 TD. T is wagon, not turbo diesel. It's 300, the T series, or touring. Some people say it's transport. And then it's still just the D for diesel. Whether it's a turbo diesel is designated by the turbo diesel badge or diesel badge. In America, they were all turbo diesel for the wagon. The 300D, just straight up 300D, is the sedan version. Those are a lot more common. You see them everywhere. They just have regular suspension, a regular strut. You know, I think factory they came with Bilstein struts, shocks I should say, because it's just a shock inside of the spring. Regular shock, coil spring, the same design and everything like that, but it's not a direct bolt-on replacement. You can't just take the 300D shocks and put them in here. First of all, they don't really just bolt in, I don't think. I've seen conflicting reports though. I see that there's a company that sells what appear to just be 300D shocks to convert these, and then I also looked up the 300D shocks, and they look like they would just go in. But then there's Mercedes source, which says, on a video at least, that they do not just bolt right in. And then there's the springs. The springs are different. I've seen that if you just put the shocks in and you were to just drop it on the ground, the springs would be way too high. The ride height would be way too high, and it would have positive camber because it'd be sitting the way it was sitting before. So obviously you could see that it is now lower than it was. It's not sagging all the way down like it was. That's where I have it now, because yesterday I opened up the nuts on the shocks, the hydraulic shocks, and a bunch of air came out of them and some fluid came out of them, but I don't know why I wasn't thinking about it yesterday, that I should have just completely let them bleed down to let the thing ride down lower. And I actually was thinking, well, let me just bleed out some of the air and then I'll fire it up and let the hydraulic system work and maybe it'll work again. Well, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. Oh, I kind of did. I'll get to what happened there. So today, first thing I did was I said, let me at least see if I can get the ride height lower, and I realized too, so it worked. I put some drain pans under there, and I opened those nuts up on both sides, and I actually kind of even put my weight on the back, and it was like, it kind of like, smushed down to a point where I said, okay, that's good. I tightened them up, and now it actually has suspension. So now it's actually, it's moving. It's got damping to it. And now I realize that the reason it was hard as a rock was probably just because those hydraulic cylinders were completely pushed out by hydraulic pressure. And that is very similar to like having an airbag suspension where they're completely inflated. It's going to increase the spring rate a lot. And that also makes sense because it was kind of moving a little bit. It had a little bit of jounce to it, but now it's obviously like actual suspension again. Now, whether or not the hydraulic system is actually going to function, I don't know. And let me get to what happened yesterday. As I was messing around with everything, I was trying to figure out, as I was messing around with everything, I had no flow, and actually that's in the video. I tested to see if I had any flow, and there was nothing. The line was dry. Then I realized I wasn't getting any fluid to my pump. Well, something happened in the system. I'm now thinking this is what happened. I think there was a blockage or something, maybe because the struts were all the way up. I really don't know exactly why this happened. I'm also suspect that maybe that filter that goes in here is clogged, because right as I was messing with that, I pulled this filter out and I moved it around, and it looked like, well, I had no flow coming return line. So the return from the system goes back through here into the filter. I had no flow coming out of the filter, but I knew I just had flow going through the system. No sooner than I looked and moved the filter and saw flow when I moved the filter, I saw it kind of going around the filter. The pressure line that I just fixed blew. Like, it was like, it made a crazy sound. And actually it's my fault too. Well, it's partially, I'm thinking something happened where it overpressurized the system because of a clog or something. Maybe the filter being clogged, but this line shot off of the fitting, and it was really because I didn't have it on the hose enough. So yesterday when I put that side together, I had it screwed on the hose, and then I couldn't get the fitting to make it to the threads, so I actually screwed the other piece off the hose a bit to make it catch. By the time it started catching, I had screwed that fitting off the hose, but I could no longer get it to screw back on the hose, partly because of having to try to hold the hose with the vise and not ruin the hose. So there was only this short amount of engagement. Here's another one that I had put together before I realized I had that hole in it, and you can actually see how much more, but even this might have been not as much. So you can see the bottom part of the threads. So I actually completely redid it. I ended up just cutting that end off. Obviously this hose is completely shot, so wish me luck that even holds up anyway. Here's the filter. I gotta find hose. Monday's the only time I can go back out to see if I can find a hydraulic. Well, I know where there's a hydraulic shop I can try to get hose from, but this is the filter. It is very dirty looking, and the fluid in this thing is really nasty. It's supposed to be clear fluid, and it's black. So right now, I have the filter completely out of the system. Normally the return line goes through that filter. So now the return line is just going to go into here, and we're going to see if we have flow, and hope to God that line doesn't explode again, because that was a real mess. Talking about having a leak is one thing, but when the frickin' line just went, that was just not good. And that was right as it was just so dark I couldn't really see, so I just hit the thing with a hose to wash some of the fluid out of the engine bay, and then I went inside and I was done with it. So let's I'm actually kind of nervous now. I want to crank it up, and there's still quite a bit of juice in there. But yeah, you could see it's completely black. Like, it looks like used motor oil, and it's actually supposed to be clear. The new fluid is perfectly clear. I don't think I have enough fluid to completely flush it out, which is the thing you really need to do. I need to flush it completely out, but I only think I have like maybe 2 or 2.5 more quarts of that stuff. And I think it takes like 3. Saw some action. Yeah, we got flow. We got something. Man, that stuff is nasty. I don't know how fast it should be coming out of there, but it ain't really coming out of there very nicely. But we got a lot of juice. Alright, well, we got a lot of freaking, we got a lot of juice. It really sucks it down pretty quick. I'm actually, like I said, I don't have enough. That was one basically almost full quart. And it's pretty low now, and I only have 2 left. So rather than, I don't want to risk just not having any, because if you run it dry, then you can't drive it anyway, because it will ruin the pump. So, having old dirty fluid going through it, I hate to say, is probably better than having no fluid going through it. All right, now's the part where I make the disclaimer. Don't do what I'm doing, because I'm an idiot, and I'm just trying to make this thing drive. Basically, I got to go like 2 miles down the road today to a friend's house. I mean, I have the truck. It's not like I have to drive this, but I want to. That's just how I am. So I had no diesel or anything, and I certainly wasn't going to soak it in gasoline. Try to clean it out. I had a couple of just like leftovers of these, and obviously it's not winter anymore. This is the winterizer stuff. I put the regular cetane booster in there during the summer, and also I add, just to say, I add automatic transmission fluid to the diesels as well. even not just when they're old. Like, I just do it on every fill up. So that's how black it got. That stuff is perfectly clear, and that the second I dumped it on that filter, that all just turned black. I worked it around in there a little bit. I'm going to end up blowing it out again. I'm going to see if, then I'm going to put it on the car and see if it flows through it. So, not ideal. Definitely not something I should be doing if I want to actually save this suspension. But at the end of the day, I mean, if it, you know, I don't know. If it's really going to be a matter of putting a bunch of money into it, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to convert it to regular suspension just because it's so much money just to get accumulators is like $250. And I'm not really, for $250, I could get the shocks and springs and just convert it to a regular suspension. And I'm not that concerned about the actual load capacity of the car as much as just driving it around. But I mean, I would, you know, if I can get this working properly and not have to put a bunch of money into it, it would be really nice to have it working, because an engine would fit nicely in the back of there. And I've had an engine in the back of my Jeep Grand Cherokee. I used that as a truck, so, you know, you can put an engine in the back of this thing, 500-pound engine, and it would theoretically, with the working SLS, it would work fine. It would hold it up, you know. So, let's continue on down the path of destruction here. Alright, I got the filter back in place. Everything's connected up. I am going to pop that off and just examine to make sure I'm getting flow through my filter. Let's just give her a try here. All I can ask for, I'm not looking for it to actually operate the suspension up and down on leveling. I just want it to stay where it is at the, you know, I'm just looking for it to stay where it is, have some sort of suspension movement and damping, and not blow a line. That's really all I can ask for right now. Okay, positive things are happening. I turned it around and moved it. Nothing exploded. The kind of, I guess, sort of good, but also unfortunate thing is the suspension did droop back down where it was before. Now, this is, again, not necessarily a hydraulic issue. It could be, typically when they sag in the rear on these wagons, it's actually a mechanical issue, like worn spring isolators, possibly worn springs, or also the differential center mount for the differential is a big rubber bush as well. And that did look kind of like it was moved, like it was, you know, like the differential was pushed up and the mount needs to be replaced. But it is like exactly back where it was. But I actually feel pretty happy that it's exactly where it was, because that means it's moving, and hopefully it drives at least as good as it did before. And honestly, what happened? I don't know. I really have no clue. You know, right when I showed this car to a couple of my friends and I told them about the hydraulic suspension, they're like, oh, whoa, that's something right there. That's gonna be a problem. That's nothing. It's working, right? Well, I don't know what happened, but something happened. And I'm not even gonna, I guess I'm speaking too soon because I haven't even driven it more than 2 feet yet. So My point is, I don't know what I did to fix it. I mean, like I said, I think there might have been first of all, the line was a problem. The line had a hole in it. When the line went, it was jacked up. The wheels were sagged down. The suspension was sagged down. And then when I put it back down, the shocks, the hydraulic rams, were completely stuck out. Got it all back together. Didn't seem to have any flow, as if there was a clog. Then, like I said, like you just saw, I cleaned out that filter. I checked for flow. Now we have flow. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I bled off the rams by hand, and that went back down. So things are just coming back together and working again, and I honestly don't know what I did or didn't do to make that happen. So take it for what it is. There was a little adventure in failure and recovery of the vehicle's hydraulic system. I still honestly hate having a system like that where parts are like really not available or extremely expensive. Like, you can get new accumulators, which is not the shocks. Those are they're basically the dampers. They're ball nitrogen filled sphere that also has the oil going through it, and it's basically what acts as a damper for the hydraulic ram, the shock. You can get those, but they're like $250. So let's just say I decided, okay, well, maybe to fix it and get the ride proper, spend the $250 on the rams. Well, then what if something else is wrong with it? You know, it turns into one of those things where not only is it extremely expensive to get parts for, it's actually a simple system, and it's not like that complicated or hard to work on, but it's very expensive on parts. You can't go across the country and have a problem with this thing and with that system and be able to find parts for it. It's not going to happen. Especially not going to be affordable if you can find something. So at the end of the day, what I'm getting at is I'm still not sure about keeping that system. I might want to just go to a normal suspension, see how it is, keep all the hydraulic stuff aside so that in the future, if I want to put it back on or sell it, probably wouldn't want to sell it. I'd probably want to just keep it, and if I sold the car, I'd put it along with the car. But yeah, we're going to obviously take a drive and see if it is still good, I guess. Man, I go on. Sometimes I ramble, and I kind of forget that we're trying to make a YouTube video here. So I did actually clean the best I could with what I had. I didn't have any, I just used some like dish soap and water, hot water, and dumped it down on everything and then hosed it off. But yeah, just got to put the air cleaner back on, and she's pretty much ready to drive again. Appears, yeah, the fluid is still at the correct level in that thing. Man, she is hard starting though. You heard it and seen how rough it runs. Definitely needs injectors. I'm like 99% sure it needs injectors. It does run pretty good going down the road. Once it's warmed up, it runs great, but it does have blow by. I don't know if you saw it also in the video. You know, there's quite a bit of blow by shooting out of there, but that I'm not even that concerned about that. If the engine's worn out, it's worn out. It makes the power it makes. It's kind of fun to drive, and I am going to turn it up, because what do you do when you have a worn out engine? The one thing you're not supposed to do, try to make more power with it. And yeah, so let's get that air cleaner back on, get it back together, and take it up the road and see if it's good. All right, let's take her up the road and see what happens here. Hopefully nothing. Just normal, regular driving. She's not fully warmed up yet, but she's ready to go. Hopefully this headshot is good enough. Doing what I... Oh. Ooh, that shift wasn't happy. It's been a few days since I drove though, but... Yeah, the flare into fourth gear, I still really got to figure that out. I had it pretty dialed in last time I drove it, where it was only when it was cold it would flare into fourth gear, but it seemed like it was really good in the other gears. There's a second, third, decent, a little bit more throttle, and it'll probably flare. weird noise. Now I'm getting nervous. Better stop and check that I didn't lose a line. Is it even feasible? Trying to sit weird too, just so you can get a better view. Well, I don't have an alternator light, which last time when the belt or the line blew, oil went everywhere on the belt and had an immediate, immediately evident by the alternator light being on, the charge light. But it's just, and the back's, I haven't really hit any real bumps yet, but it's riding pretty good, and there's no banging from the rear end, although that might only be on really bad bumps. Man, that flare, I really got to get that figured out. I definitely, you know what it is, I still got to do an actual vacuum check to check the VCV valve operation and just generally make sure there's no actual vacuum leak in the system. What the heck's going on down here? Middle of nowhere, there's usually no cars, but I still like to put the four-ways on. How are we looking? Things are looking about as good as they were before. That engine's really jumping around though. She's idling a bit rough. But things are still together. Suspension's still about where it was. In fact, I gotta be honest, it almost looks like it's higher than it was, like when I first got the car. Kind of sounds like it's got a miss, doesn't it? That definitely doesn't sound right. Again, it's not fully warmed up. You can hear that injector clacking. Sounds like if it does have a miss, though, it clears right up when you rev it. Yeah, it's definitely running, idling a bit rougher than it did the last time I drove it. This is how it ran when I got it, like shaking like this. So it's kind of weird. It's been sitting for a couple days, not really running. And it's the same thing. I might still have a brake caliper sticking on me too. Damn it, right to third. If there's a brake caliper sticking, because it still seems to roll all right. The other day it was smoking on that brake rear right. Let's see what good shift. Oh, that was to third, no wonder. Dude, this thing is driving like it's riding really good. There's no, so again, I'm not hitting like tremendously large bumps yet. The bridge down here, that'll tell us something. It's definitely a little like leaning, and it's like wallowy. Oh, I just heard the bang. Never mind. Whatever that is, there's probably some... Man, I'll tell you what though, the steering is pretty loose in this. And it almost seems worse now, like the alignment is off more than it was. That's interesting. You know, we got to go through a lot of that stuff, the mechanical, just like general drivability stuff. Let's see how it bangs over this bridge. And it's still a little banging in the back. It definitely feels different though. Like, I don't know, for some reason it feels softer than it was. Hey guys, voiceover Gary. So after the drive and after I had filmed this video, later on this evening, I actually went and drove it around a little bit more and went down some other roads, and this thing is definitely way better than it was before. I mean, it rides so smooth. That little bit of knocking, I occasionally still hear faint knocking from the rear, but there used to be a pretty significant knocking. I think there was air in the system. Just going up and down my driveway would make like a significant knocking, even if I was going like 1 mile an hour. So this thing rides really good, and it's definitely working. The self-leveling is another story, but the shocks, the damping, everything like that is actually working really well. That really, I tell you what, the steering really annoys me. The fact that the alignment's off like that, or, well, the looseness in the steering plus things just being off. Leave it in drive. I guess I'll go this way and I'll check everything over again. Come on, go! See how it shifts this time. You hear it chirp in a second? I always hear weird noises and I'm like thinking stuff is coming apart, but wouldn't be the case as much if it wasn't that the car just let me down, and now I think everything's gonna come apart on it. So. No strange lights on the dash, no major smoke pouring out of the hood. Let's take a look under the hood. Honestly, it does feel different. Like it, just going up the driveway, like it used to bang more than that. Like that kind of banging I was talking about. Just like kind of going through the bumps in the driveway, it used to make like a thunking from the rear. And it's not doing that now. Alright. Things are still as they were. Well, I know a 5-cylinder sounds a little rough, but I don't know. I think that's a miss at idle. You tell me if you know these cars. Should it be bop, 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 bop? Or should it be a little smoother than that at idle? I mean, it definitely clears up once you go. You know, no doubt in my mind it's on all 5 cylinders under power, and it feels like it's got good power. Alright, well, that was definitely an unexpected video. but I didn't have time to actually do the thing I wanted to do for the video because I was dealing with this, so it kind of had to be a video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I hate to say it, but the videos, two videos I put out on this didn't really do many views, so kind of sucks in that sense. But whoever's out there enjoying it right now and likes this car, well, there you go, another video on it. So dude, it definitely seems like it's riding higher in the back. I mean, I'll have to look back at some of the pictures or video footage, but I don't know. I think it actually is a little bit higher up in the back than it was when I first got it. It's definitely riding lower than it should be, but yeah, I don't know. I think well, I don't know what I think. It's also lower on this side, but it's not necessarily lower on this side. I should say it's just that the driveway is uneven. All right, so like I said, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks guys for subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed and you like this and you like some of the other stuff you've seen on the channel, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, comment down below, let me know what you like to see, and just say something in the comments. I don't know. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.